Tales of Amestralia. The Ascension of Kuzala. Re-encounter. During her third year as a librarian, Kuzala began studying the lineages of important historical figures, which made her think about her own family and how they were doing after years of not seeing them. With this curiosity in her mind, Kuzala, when she took a vacation at the end of the year 3E2785, decided to travel to Rockholm to see her family. When she arrived in front of her house, she found her mother, who quickly recognized her and hugged her daughter very tightly. She was very well received inside her old house, where she was surprised to meet a woman called Iviska, the wife of her brother Jarko. Her mother introduced the two. Kuzala could see that Iviska was a few months pregnant, and according to her mother, this was the third baby she would bring into the family, something that shocked Kuzala, who still remembered her brother as a young single man. Kuzala met her 7-year-old niece, Kitova, and her 4-year-old nephew, Niskov. Kitova had her mother's brown eyes, but the rest of her face left no doubt that she was Jarko's daughter. As a contrast, Niskov had eyes like those of Joan, but his skin was pale like his mother's, and like her he also had orange and curly hair. Marvalia also told her that her sister Deadliest was married and expecting her second child. Kuzala was surprised by the news. She imagined that her siblings would be older, but Kuzala neither imagined nor was prepared to know that they already had so many children. Kuzala asked about her sister Marvia, eager to know if her younger sister was also married and with children. Kuzala says in her diary that her mother hesitated to answer the question, and when she did, she said, "She is married, but children," making an expression with sad eyes and looking at the floor. At this moment Jarko arrived at the house and saw his sister. He found her strange for a moment and asked coldly, looking into her eyes, what she was doing there again after so many years apart. But after a minute of distance, Jarko hugged his sister tightly and confessed that he missed her a lot. Kuzala hugged him back and said the same to him and congratulated her brother on the family he built. Jarko asked where Kuzala was living and if she had gotten married or engaged. Kuzala was explaining her work as a librarian in Turgo to her brother when Joan arrived at the door. Joan was stunned to see his daughter after so many years. Kuzala's mother mentioned to her husband how they had met a few hours before, and Joan did not appear any positive emotions. He criticized Kuzala for being there, saying that it was a mistake and that she no longer belonged to that family. Kuzala tried to argue that she was just visiting. Joan said that she had already visited her family and that she could leave. Marvalia criticized Joan, saying that he was being rude to Kuzala just when she had returned home. An argument arose between them, and soon Kuzala accused her father of not having changed, of still being a rude Neanderthal. Her father, who didn't understand a shred of archaeology, didn't understand his daughter's insult, but Kuzala didn't care. She said she would leave, but first she asked her mother where she could find her sisters. Marvalia said that they both lived in the house of the Avurim family. Kuzala was shocked by the news and realized that this meant that Marvia had married Capio. Joan explained with great resentment that after Kuzala fled, his name was tarnished with the patriarch of the Avurim family and other families in the city. To clear his name, he offered his youngest daughter to Capio as compensation for Kuzala's defection. Kuzala was furious with the news and cursed her father one last time before almost running away to go to the house of the Avurim family. Kuzala walked through the snowy, dirty and narrow streets of Rockholm until she arrived in front of the Avurim house. In front of the house Kuzala met Kodajok Avurim, Capio's older brother and now the husband of her sister Deadliest. Kuzala asked about her sisters, but Kodajok didn't recognize her right away. Kuzala said her name, and after a few moments Kodajok recognized her and confessed to being impressed to see her back in Rockholm. Kuzala thanked him briefly, but made it clear that she just wanted to talk to her sisters. Kodajok took her into the house and called for Deadliest. She soon went down the stairs and recognized her sister the same moment she saw her. The two hugged and Kuzala mentioned the big belly that her sister had. Deadliest mentioned that she was expecting the second baby and that the first one was called Leko. This one was already 6 years old, and that the next one was 7 months in the womb. Kuzala congratulated her sister, and Deadliest introduced her to Leko, a very shy boy who was a perfect mix between Kodajok and Deadliest. After meeting her nephew Kuzala went back to talking to her sister deadliest, who asked the questions that Kuzala was already waiting for. Kuzala told briefly about her life in Turgo. Deadliest questioned her sister for not being married yet, because if she waited too long she would grow old and have no more suitors. Kuzala said she had other priorities, but deadliest argued that these priorities would not give her a family and that without a family she would grow old alone. Her sister's comments made Kuzala angry, but Kuzala realized that there was no point in arguing with deadliest on the matter, as her sister had inherited this family view from her parents. Kuzala just said that she would think about the matter and later asked for her sister Marvia. Deadliest displayed a look of sadness when talking about her younger sister. Deadliest told Kuzala about how Marvia was forced to replace her when she fled the city. Joan just waited a few months until Marvia was 15 years old to marry her to Capio. Marvia didn't like Capio and had a lot of difficulty adapting to married life. After 2 years of sulking, Marvia began to accept her new life with Capio and stopped complaining about having to sleep next to him every day to deadliest. However, unlike when Marvia agreed to live a married life, after 8 years of marriage, Marvia was still not a mother. According to deadliest, Marvia became pregnant in the 3rd year of marriage, but 4 months into her pregnancy she ended up losing the baby and since then she has never gotten pregnant again. This was something that irritated Capio, who really wanted to be a father. Kuzala was very shaken when she realized the reality in which her sister lived. In a way it was her fault for leaving, but she knew that deep down it was her father's fault, Joan, who forced his daughter to get married. The conversation between Kuzala and deadliest was interrupted when Capio and Marvia arrived together from the street. Capio looked at Kuzala for a few moments before asking if his eyes were lying to him. Marvia on the other hand didn't ask a single question. She looked furiously at her sister and after a few moments she headed towards the stairs that led to the upper floor and climbed them without looking back, her heavy steps heralding the anger she was feeling. Capio got into a passive-aggressive argument with Kuzala, criticizing her for abandoning him years ago and leaving him with an even more frigid and unpleasant version of her. Kuzala said that she didn't regret leaving and that she didn't have anything against Capio, but she neither had anything in his favor. Capio was obviously irritated by the comment, but Kuzala saw in his eyes that somehow he was happy to see her again. Kuzala knew since her adolescence that Capio liked her very much, because on his walks he always courted her with a sparkle in his eyes and was constantly smiling, and for this reason he was probably very shaken when he discovered that his future wife had fled the city just so she wouldn't have to go through the humiliation of marrying him. Kuzala never tried to hurt Capio, but she understood that Capio himself never knew the nuances of his fiancée's escape and for this reason he was resentful and bitter for years and now, faced her, he didn't know how to react. Capio asked if Kuzala was married to someone. Kuzala replied saying no, and that she worked in a library at a school. Capio mentioned that at least he hadn't been abandoned so she could be with someone else, something that Kuzala could see gave him great relief. Kuzala loved Samso, but she had not left the city for him. Kuzala, feeling Capio's heartbreak, wondered whether or not she should tell him that she had Samso in her life, but just like deadliest and her father, Capio was not worthy of an in-depth discussion on the subject, as they all had too much conviction in their own lifestyles and she would not be the one to convince them otherwise. Kuzala asked for permission to speak to Marvia and before receiving any response, she went upstairs together with deadliest. Upon arriving at the room where Marvia was, her sister showed the same furious look as before. Kuzala wondered why she was looking at her that way. As she approached, Kuzala greeted her sister and mentioned how she missed her, and Marvia, irritated, responded by telling her sister that if she really missed her so much, she wouldn't have taken so long to come back. Kuzala, feeling her sister's resentment, mentioned that perhaps she should have returned earlier. Marvia confirmed the statement with a voice full of resentment. Kuzala asked if her sister was mad at her and Marvia asked a rhetorical question, "Why would I be mad at you, my sister? I look around and ask myself this right now, why? Just why?" Kuzala told her that it was never her intention to make Marvia marry in her place, and Marvia started arguing with her sister, spitting insults, and blaming her sister for running away and letting her pay the price and live the life that should have been for hers. Kuzala tries to apologize and Marvia screams louder, saying that apologies wouldn't solve her life. Marvia burst into tears as she blamed all her frustration on her sister. Kuzala tried to console her, but Marvia didn't allow her sister to get close and sent her away, saying that she hated her. This convinced Kuzala to return after Marvia had calmed down. When Kuzala was leaving the room, she heard her sister shout, "That's right, go away. Leave me alone, this is what you do best, it was so easy the last time. Do it, sister, do it again." Kuzala was shocked to hear her sister say that. It was then that she understood that Marvia was not angry because she had returned, but because she hadn't done it sooner. Kuzala asked this if anyone still had the letters she left when she went away. This told that the 2 letters to the family were with their mother. Kuzala walked through the snow to her parents' house while reflecting on the argument with her sister. When she arrived at her parents' house, she called for her mother, who quickly went to attend to her daughter. She called her to come in, but Kuzala didn't want to, saying that she would sleep in a hotel. She just asked her mother to give her the letter she left for Marvia years ago. Marvalia asked her daughter about what had happened between the two. Kuzala said that Marvia was furious with her and that's why she wanted the letter that she left behind when she went away. Her mother took some time looking for the letter, but eventually found it and handed the 2 letters to her daughter and gave her a bag with a cake she had prepared. Kuzala slept in a hotel that night where she ate her mother's cake and remembered the times when she was a child and anxiously waited for the cake to be ready, something that made her feel happy momentarily before remembering Marvia again. Kuzala read and reread the letter she wrote to her sister years ago. The letter clearly said that she would return as soon as she could to take her sister along with her to her new life. Kuzala had forgotten that she had written this in the letter. She understood that Marvia took that sentence as a promise and waited for years for her sister to return and rescue her from the man even she didn't want to marry. Kuzala felt terrible about what she had done and thought about how she could resolve that situation. She spent the night depressed, brooding inside, and in the midst of her melancholy she ended up falling asleep. Kuzala spent 2 days reflecting on her sister's situation until she received an unexpected visit. This and Marvia went to visit her at the hotel. Marvia hesitated for a few moments, but after hearing her sister say her name, she ran to hug her while apologizing for being rude earlier. Kuzala, who was also feeling guilty, forgave her sister and also apologized for not returning sooner. This joined in the hug and together the 3 spent a pleasant time enjoying each other's embrace. Marvia eventually opened up to Kuzala, saying that she waited for years and that she didn't even know if Kuzala would return for her, as she thought she might have died. This intervened and said that it was too late now, as Marvia was committed to Capio and could not just leave. Marvia said that she didn't care about Capio and that she felt disgusted with him every time they slept together. This criticized her sister and Kuzala said that the consummated marriage between the 2 was indeed a big problem, for if she took her sister out of the city without her husband's permission, it would be the crime of spousal kidnapping, which under the laws of Rockholm was a crime punishable by death, even if done by a woman. Marvia begged her sister to find a way to get her out of Rockholm, as she hated that city, hated Capio and the Yavurim. This scolded Marvia, as she was now a Yavurim just like her husband and son. Marvia apologized to her sister, but still maintained her disdaining attitude. Marvia confessed that she hated Capio and his family so much that in order not to have a permanent bond with them, she spent 2 years drinking a tea that did not allow her to get pregnant. This was shocked by the revelation and reprimanded her sister for her actions. Marvia responded to this saying that she was not like her and did not want to be a mother, and that if she became one, she would have an eternal bond with Capio that she would never be able to erase. This then commented on her pregnancy, which lasted only 4 months. Marvia confessed that in the first 2 years she hated every moment of her marriage to Capio, and during this period she always took precautions not to get pregnant by him, but in the 3rd year of marriage and with no news from Kuzala, she tried to accept her new life and tried to be a wife like this was, so much so that she stopped drinking the tea and ended up getting pregnant. However, as the months went by, Marvia realized once again that she didn't want that life. She didn't like Capio and didn't like to think that she was creating a continuation of him. She hated the nausea and the family's expectation that this would be the first of many children. Being completely disgusted by the whole situation, Marvia decided to take a pill that caused her to lose the baby, and according to her, that was the moment of greatest relief she felt since she married Capio. Daenerys was disgusted with her sister, for her Marvia's action had been an unforgivable crime, which the karma of the world would make her pay the price for. Marvia however showed no remorse and only said what a crime it would have been to let an unwanted child be born. Daenerys argued that everyone in the family wanted the birth of the child and Marvia argued that everyone except the most important person wanted the birth of the child. Marvia explained that she would never forgive herself for having a child with someone she detests, a husband she didn't choose in a marriage she didn't want to have. The discussion continued for some time, but neither of the sides changed their minds. Kuzala commented that for Marvia to take such action she must really detest Capio and that if her dislike was so great, getting rid of that marriage was not merely a matter of choice, it was a matter of health. After talking for a long time about Kuzala's life in Turgo, Deny this, and Marvia returned home with Kuzala's promise that she would think of a solution to her younger sister's problem.